Before the darkness begins, before the whispers crawl through the trees and the shadows stretch across the land, there is a moment. A moment where you, the listener, stand at the edge of the unknown. You have a choice: step back into safety, or follow the story into the heart of fear itself. If you dare to walk this path, if you crave the thrill of ancient nightmares and creatures older than time, then pause for a single breath. Reach for that button, the one that pledges your loyalty to the tales that follow. Subscribe to the channel, for every chapter will pull you deeper into darkness. Hit the like button to let the shadows know you are ready. And if your courage holds, leave a comment, for your words may awaken the first whispers. The hollow ones listen. The abyss waits. And the story is not yet told. Every click strengthens the firelight, every subscription adds another torch against the night. Without you, the darkness may overwhelm. But with you, perhaps the tale can live on. So, prepare yourself. Brace your heart. And when you are ready, scroll down, press play, and step into the forgotten dawn. Because once you do, there is no turning back. In the beginning, there was no memory. The earth was silent, wrapped in mists that never lifted, and the forests whispered with voices that had no mouths. Before men shaped tools, before fire was tamed, something else stirred in the shadows of creation. They were not gods, though older than gods. They were not beasts, though they devoured flesh and bone. They were not spirits, though they drifted between the visible and the unseen. They were simply the first ones, the nameless creatures that haunted the forgotten dawn. Legends claim the soil itself shuddered when they walked. Their steps left no prints, but the grass withered, and the stones cracked beneath their weight. Some were vast and shapeless, blacker than the caves they slithered from. Others had forms too precise, too sharp, as though carved by hands that hated light. They were made of contradictions, eyes that reflected no flame, teeth that glistened without mouths, voices that howled like storms but whispered like grieving children. The first tribes of humankind did not know language as we do. Their speech was rhythm and breath, sound carved from fear. They lived close to the rivers, under low skies, building shelters of branches and hides. They knew hunger, cold, and the hunt, but they did not yet know terror, until the creatures came. It began with the vanishing of animals. Herds of deer that once crossed the valleys were gone. Birds fell silent in the canopy, as though smothered by an invisible hand. Hunters returned with empty hands and hollow eyes, whispering of shadows that moved against the wind. At night, they claimed, the forest opened its mouth and breathed. One hunter, Kether, was the first to see them. He had wandered too far, following the tracks of a boar that seemed fresh though the ground showed no prints. The air grew colder, heavy with a smell like wet iron. He turned and saw, not a beast, not a man, not even a form he could name. It shifted as he looked, a body of black smoke wrapped around bones that were too many, bending the wrong way. Its eyes were like hollow moons, pale and unblinking. When it looked at him, Kether felt his blood freeze inside his veins. He ran, but the sound followed, not footsteps, not breath, but the rattling of chains dragged across stone. Kether returned broken. His tongue trembled, his body shook with fever. Around the fire, he spoke of the hollow ones, creatures that waited between trees and followed hunters home. His people laughed at first, dismissing it as the madness of hunger. But when the night came, and the fires burned low, a cry pierced the silence. It was not the cry of a man, nor the call of an animal. It was the cry of a child, thin and aching, carried through the forest like a song. Mothers clutched their infants, hunters gripped their spears, and the firelight flickered as though something vast had passed between them and the stars. No one slept that night. No one spoke. The next dawn, tracks were found. Not the tracks of deer or wolves, but deep impressions in the earth, shaped like claws that had too many fingers. Trees bent away as if they had tried to escape. The tribe understood then, the world was not empty. It was occupied. The elders told stories to calm the children, but their own voices shook. Some said these were the remnants of a broken creation, cast out when the gods shaped light. Others said they were older than time itself, the hunger that had existed before all things. Whatever the truth, the people knew one thing: the forgotten dawn had ended. The world now belonged to shadows that did not wish to be seen. Nights grew longer. Fires could no longer hold them back. When flames were lit, the creatures stayed at the edges, watching with hollow eyes. But when embers dimmed, when sleep tempted the weary, the hollow ones came closer. Shapes slid between huts, breathing the air of children, leaving frost on their lips. The people prayed to gods they had not yet named, begging for protection. None came. One night, the tribe vanished. Their fires still smoldered, their tools lay scattered, but no voice, no body remained. Only silence. Only the marks of claws in the dirt. The valley grew empty. Grass grew tall where once laughter rang. The hollow ones had fed. And so the first memory of mankind's terror was carved not in stone, but in blood and absence. The forgotten dawn was no dawn at all, it was the long night from which humanity would never awaken. The valley was empty where the first tribe once lived. Their hearths had turned to cold ash, and the wind carried only silence. For moons, no hunter dared step into those lands. The memory of claw marks and vanishing souls spread from fire to fire, whispered in fear. The hollow ones had taken the people, and no one knew how or why. But fear, though strong, could not starve the living. Eventually, other tribes wandered into the cursed valley, seeking water, shelter, and game. At first, it seemed safe. The rivers flowed, the forests were thick, and the fields were green. A new people built their homes of timber and bone, certain the stories were just madness carried on the wind. For a season, nothing stirred. Their children laughed, their hunters brought down deer, and their fires pushed back the night. The world seemed whole again. But the hollow ones do not forget. It began with the animals once more. Herds scattered, tracks twisted into shapes that could not belong to hooves or paws. The air grew colder even beneath the summer sun, and the wind carried scents of rot where no corpse lay. The hunters told their chieftain they felt eyes on them, though the forests appeared still. At night, strange cries echoed, not wolves, not owls, but voices mimicking their own. A mother heard her son calling her name outside the hut, though the boy lay sleeping beside her. When she opened the door, she found only the forest, still and waiting. The elders warned the people to stay inside after dark. They made offerings of bone and fire, but the ground spat out the ashes, untouched. The hollow ones wanted no gifts. They wanted blood. The first slaughter came on the night of the red moon. The sky burned with an unnatural glow, staining the rivers crimson. The people gathered in the center of their camp, too afraid to sleep. The fires blazed higher than ever before, but still, the shadows deepened. And then the air split open with a shriek, not of one creature, but many. From the tree line, they came. Shapes that shifted like smoke, crawling on too many limbs. Faces stretched and split open like masks tearing away from flesh. Some walked like men, tall and gaunt, but their heads twisted completely backward. Others dragged themselves on hands that never ended, joints bending until the bones cracked. Their eyes shone with hollow light, white and unyielding. The warriors raised their spears, but terror drained their strength. When the first hollow one struck, it moved faster than wind. Its claw tore through a man's chest, spilling him open before his scream even rose. Blood hissed as it touched the ground, as if the soil itself rejected it. Another creature lunged, pulling a woman into its body of mist and bone, swallowing her without a trace. Panic broke the tribe. Mothers clutched children, running into the dark, but the shadows followed. The hollow ones toyed with them, mimicking their voices. A father heard his daughter calling for him and ran to the sound, only to find his own child's face staring from the blackness, twisted, pale, and smiling with teeth too sharp to be human. The screams did not last long. They were drowned out by silence, an unnatural hush that smothered the night. When the moon finally sank, half the tribe was gone. Blood stained the earth, huts were torn open, and bodies were left in pieces too mangled to bury. The survivors gathered at dawn, their faces hollow with grief. They had learned the truth, the hollow ones did not kill for hunger. They killed for something older, something crueler. The elders argued. Some said the people must leave the valley, abandon the rivers and the fertile fields. Others claimed there was nowhere to run, that the hollow ones would follow no matter where they went. A few whispered of forbidden rites, to give names to the creatures, to bind them with words. But such knowledge came with a price, and none yet dared to pay it. As the sun set again, the tribe prepared for war. Spears were sharpened, fires built into great circles, chants raised to steel their hearts. The night came, and with it, the shadows. This time, the warriors stood their ground. When the first hollow one lunged, they thrust their spears, piercing flesh that bled black smoke. It screamed, a sound like children wailing inside a cave. For the first time, a creature fell. But victory was short-lived. Where one fell, 3 more appeared. They tore through warriors as easily as they tore through wood. Fire slowed them, but never stopped them. The tribe fought until dawn, blood soaking the soil. Few lived to see the sunrise. That was the first blood. It was not the last. From then on, the Hollow Ones were no longer whispers in the dark. They were hunters, and humanity was their prey. Stories spread across every land, of clawed shadows that moved without light, of voices that lured the weak, of children born pale-eyed who were never truly human. The earth itself seemed cursed, as though the creatures had claimed their dominion. And yet, though fear ruled, so too did defiance. For in that first war, the people learned one truth: the Hollow Ones could bleed. They could scream. They could be fought. It was not enough to save the valley. But it was enough to spark hope, and hope is the enemy of shadows. The memory of the first blood never faded. The survivors carried it across rivers, over mountains, and through endless forests. Wherever they settled, they spoke of the Hollow Ones in whispers, never daring to call them by anything but vague shadows. They, the others, the watchers in dark. To speak of them was to invite their presence, for the creatures moved in ways no wall, no fire, no distance could keep away. Yet fear alone was not enough to keep men silent. Curiosity festered. The elders studied the screams of the Hollow Ones, their cries that sounded like children, storms, and grief twisted into one. They realized these were not meaningless sounds. They were syllables, patterns, words. The first who dared to test this was a woman named Shara. She was not a warrior, but a dreamer who listened too long to the voices beyond firelight. One night, she carved marks into the earth, marks she claimed the creatures whispered into her mind. She called them names. When she spoke the first aloud, the air froze, and the fire dimmed though no wind blew. The trees leaned inward, groaning as though in pain. And from the shadows, a figure appeared, not entirely formed, not entirely real. Its body was a trembling outline, its eyes pale with hunger. The tribe panicked, but Shara did not. She raised her hands and spoke again, repeating the words she had drawn. To their horror, the thing stopped moving. It quivered like a beast struck by a leash. The name held it in place. The people believed they had discovered a weapon, but Shara warned them, a name is not ours to give. A name belongs to what it names. Speak it wrongly, and it will unmake you. Few listened. Soon, others began to carve symbols and whisper names into the air. Some claimed power, shadows obeyed them, fires flared higher, dreams bent to their command. But others screamed as their voices were stolen mid-breath, as their tongues blackened and rotted in their mouths. For every name spoken, something was gained, and something was lost. The Hollow Ones hated this. They prowled closer to camps, pressing against the edges of firelight. They whispered their own names into the ears of children, twisting them in dreams until the little ones awoke pale-eyed and silent. Mothers wept as their sons no longer answered, their bodies alive but their souls stolen away. The creatures were not just hunters now, they were corruptors, feeding on the very essence of speech. One elder, desperate to save his people, attempted the unthinkable. He summoned a council and spoke the longest of the forbidden names, one that burned like fire in his throat. The sound of it cracked the earth and turned the moon blood-red. From the darkness came not one Hollow One, but something far greater. It was tall as a tree, yet thin as bone. Its head bore no features except for a gaping mouth that stretched from crown to chin. From that mouth came no sound, only silence so heavy it crushed the heart. The people fell to their knees, their ears ringing, their minds fracturing. The elder tried to speak the name again, to control it, but the silence swallowed his words. His body collapsed into dust before the eyes of all. The creature stepped into the circle of fire and extinguished it without touch. Darkness claimed the camp. By dawn, nothing remained but ashes. Those who survived fled and spread the tale, that names could indeed hold power, but they could also summon greater horrors. From then on, the people carved their warnings into stone, speaking less, fearing the sound of their own voices. Villages grew mute after sundown, lips pressed tight lest a name slip free and call something from the dark. But even silence is a name in itself. The Hollow Ones learned the language of fear, of unspoken prayers, of thoughts whispered inside skulls. They did not need to be called anymore, they were already listening. And so the curse of names spread across the world. Words became dangerous. Songs turned to whispers. Language itself was poisoned, a trap where every syllable might awaken something best left forgotten. Yet among humanity, not all despaired. There were those who saw in the curse an opportunity. If a name could summon, it could bind. If it could bind, it could command. These men and women, half mad with ambition, would become the first warlocks, tamers of the unspeakable, willing to gamble their souls for fleeting power. And with their rise, the war between shadows and humankind would no longer be fought only with spears and fire. It would be fought with words, with names that scarred the world itself. The Hollow Ones, once hunters in the night, had found rivals. And the earth would bleed for it. The tribes had lived in fear for generations, whispering of the Hollow Ones, hiding behind fires, praying their words would not betray them. But humanity is not made to bow forever. Out of fear rose defiance, and out of defiance, the first great kingdom was born. They called it Derricker, the city of walls. Its stones were carved from black mountains, its towers stretched into the clouds, and its gates were reinforced with iron said to be blessed by the sun itself. The people of Derricker believed themselves safe within their fortress. They traded silence for song once more, raising voices to the sky. Priests inscribed holy words on the walls, runes that burned against shadow. For a time, the Hollow Ones prowled the forests and valleys but did not breach the city's light. It was an age of fragile peace. Crops grew in the fields, children laughed in the streets, and the people of Derricker believed they had outlasted their nightmares. But shadows do not fade, they wait. And when they could not breach the walls, they found another path, through dreams. At first, it was subtle. A child woke screaming in the night, claiming he had seen pale faces watching him from the corners of his sleep. A soldier confessed he could no longer tell whether he was dreaming, for the streets of the city twisted into forests in his mind. Priests dismissed these as tricks of exhaustion. But soon, the dream spread. Every night, more and more people woke trembling, clutching their chests, whispering of the same figures, hollow-eyed shadows that walked the streets when the moon rose. In their dreams, the walls of Derricker crumbled. The gates split open. The shadows poured in. And when the dreamers awoke, they carried pieces of the nightmare with them, frost on their lips, dirt beneath their nails, scratches across their arms. The kingdom began to unravel. Farmers refused to work the fields, fearing they would sleep under the sun and never wake. Soldiers refused the night watch, claiming they already fought the enemy in their dreams. The king of Derricker, Althamar the Bronze, sought answers from his high priests. They told him, the Hollow Ones do not need to breach the walls. They have already breached the soul. Desperate, the king ordered great fires to burn in every street, night and day, hoping to drown shadow with flame. He commanded dream words be carved into every door, every window. For a season, it worked. The people rested. The kingdom breathed again. But the Hollow Ones are older than fire, older than words. They adapted. Soon, entire families began to vanish. Their homes were left intact, their fires still burning, but no trace of their bodies remained. Only their shadows lingered, stretched across walls as though they still lived inside. At night, these shadows moved. They turned their heads, blinked hollow eyes, and whispered with voices that no longer belonged to the living. The priests panicked. They returned to forbidden knowledge, the cursed art of names. In the deepest chambers of Derricker, they carved the true names of the Hollow Ones into black stone, believing they could bind them forever. But they were careless. Names are chains, but chains can break. What they summoned was no servant, but a king, a lord of shadows older than their city. He appeared first in the dreams of King Althamar. The monarch dreamt of his throne room filled with darkness, and from it rose a figure taller than any man, robed in night, crowned with antlers of bone. Its face was featureless save for two eyes, white and endless, that burned with hunger. It spoke without sound, its voice crawling directly into Althamar's mind. Walls fall. Names fail. You are mine. The king awoke screaming, his body drenched in blood though no wound was found. From that day, he was never the same. He raved in the streets, warning his people that the walls were lies, that the shadows lived inside them all. His own guards abandoned him, for his madness spread like fire. And then the siege began. The Hollow Ones came not with armies, but with silence. The nights grew longer, the stars blinked out, and the moon vanished behind endless mist. In the city, people began to fall asleep standing, their eyes rolling back as if pulled into another world. When they awoke, They were no longer themselves. Their bodies twisted, their limbs bent, their mouths gaped in silent screams. They had become vessels. The hollow ones had found a way to wear human flesh. Dereker burned. Its towers toppled. Its streets ran red with blood and black with shadow. The wards shattered, the fires died. The kingdom that had once defied the dark was swallowed whole. But the story does not end in silence. In the final hours, when the city was collapsing, King Althamar stood atop the broken walls with a blade of burning iron. Though madness consumed him, he faced the Lord of Shadows in the heart of the city. His last cry was not a plea, but a challenge. You will not take all of us. My blood is the gate. My death is the lock. He plunged the blade into his own chest, and the fire consumed him. The explosion tore through Dereker, scattering stone and shadow alike. The city was lost, but the hollow ones retreated, driven back into the cracks of the earth. The lost kingdom was no more. Its ruins stand buried beneath centuries of dust, its name forgotten by most. But the legend endured, that humanity could fight, could defy even the hollow ones, if only through sacrifice. And though Dereker fell, its story lit a spark that would carry through ages, the hope that even shadows can bleed, even nightmares can burn. When Dereker fell, the world trembled. Its towers, once thought eternal, lay scattered like broken teeth, and the fields around it turned to wastelands where nothing grew. Yet even as the kingdom burned, whispers spread of something deeper, something beneath the earth that no wall, no fire, no sword could withstand. The hollow ones did not rise from the forests, nor from the rivers, nor from the winds. They came from below. From the caverns no sunlight had ever touched, from abysses where the bones of the world lay bare. The oldest of tribes had always feared the caves, for they said the ground was hollow, a womb that birthed hunger itself. Few dared enter. Fewer returned. Those who did spoke only madness, and whispers that never left their ears. Generations after Dereker's ruin, seekers emerged. They were not warriors, nor kings, but wanderers who craved forbidden knowledge. They called themselves the Pale Choir, for their dreams sang with voices that were not theirs. They believed the hollow ones could be understood, that their origin lay hidden in the depths. Armed with torches, symbols, and madness, they descended. The entrance was said to gape like a wound in the earth. A chasm, blacker than night, wide enough to swallow armies. From it rose winds colder than ice, carrying with them a sound, faint, almost human, like whispers layered upon whispers. The deeper they went, the louder it grew, until the echoes became unbearable. The caverns did not echo like normal stone, they spoke back. One wanderer recorded what he heard upon the walls with blood, scratching it with jagged stone. We were here before light. We are the hunger that made gods tremble. We are the silence between breaths. The deeper the Pale Choir descended, the stranger the world became. The stone twisted into shapes that resembled faces, mouths wide open in eternal screams. Stalagmites bent like limbs, grasping toward the intruders. Water dripped not like drops but like words, each plink forming syllables no human tongue should know. The very air seemed alive, pressing against their lungs, whispering, whispering, whispering. And then they found it, the abyss. A cavern vast beyond imagination, so large their torches could not reach its ceiling. At its center was a pit, endless and black, from which the whispers rose like smoke. The sound was unbearable, thousands of voices at once, speaking in every tongue, every tone, every scream. Some begged for help. Some cursed the living. Some wept with grief. Others laughed with madness. The choir fell to their knees, clutching their heads, for the voices clawed at their minds. Some tore out their own eyes, crying that they had seen too much. Others jumped willingly into the pit, arms spread, faces twisted in ecstasy. For the whispers promised power. They promised freedom from death. They promised truth. But truth was never meant for human minds. One of the choir, a man named Sareth, resisted. He stood at the edge, staring into the black, and demanded, "What are you?" The whispers stilled. For the first time, silence reigned. And then, from the pit, a single voice rose, deeper than thunder, sharper than bone. "We are what your fear makes flesh. We are the thought before words. We are the first hunger, the last shadow. We are older than time, and time is our child. You cannot know us, only join us." The ground quaked. The pit pulsed like a heart. And from it rose hands, not of flesh, not of stone, but something in between. They reached for Sareth, their fingers too many, their grip too cold. He screamed as they dragged him downward. The others fled, but not all escaped. Some were pulled into the dark. Some stumbled out of the caves days later, pale and hollow, their voices gone. Those who survived carried the whispers with them. They could not sleep, for every time they closed their eyes, the abyss called. They spoke without meaning to, muttering in the dark with tongues not their own. Their shadows no longer matched their bodies. And soon, villages where they returned began to wither, crops died, children fell ill, animals turned rabid. The survivors of the choir became cursed, living conduits of the abyss itself. From then on, no one doubted, the hollow ones did not simply haunt forests and valleys. They were born from the womb of the earth, from the whispering abyss, and as long as it remained, so too would the creatures. And so a prophecy spread, the end of mankind will not come from the stars, nor from fire, but from below. When the abyss rises, all voices will fall silent, and the world will belong once more to the first hunger. The whispering abyss waits still. Some say if you stand too long at the mouth of a cave, you can hear it. A faint breath against your ear. A voice that is not yours. A promise that someday, the earth itself will open, and everything you love will be devoured. For centuries the hollow ones remained whispers in the dark, shadows in caves, curses upon the unlucky. But there comes a moment when the hidden no longer hides, when the womb of the abyss opens wide and what crawls within spills into the world above. That moment was not marked by a single scream, nor a single death, it was marked by silence. Whole villages ceased to speak. Forests grew too still. The wind itself seemed to halt. Then the hunt began. They did not march as armies do, nor swarm like beasts. They emerged, scattered and endless, each shaped differently but bound by the same hunger. Some towered with limbs too long, joints bending backward, their faces featureless masks of stretched skin. Others slithered low, their ribcages scraping the ground, jaws splitting open wider than their skulls should allow. Some appeared almost human from afar, but when approached, their movements betrayed them, jerking, unnatural, too precise, as if flesh was a disguise worn badly. The first records of the hunt tell of a caravan that vanished on the salt road. Merchants found days later described wagons ripped apart, wheels gnawed through, blood soaking the sand. No corpses remained, only trails of drag marks leading into the hills. The tracks were many, overlapping, as though an army had crawled on all fours. At night, survivors swore they heard something following, whispering from stone to stone. When dawn broke, they found half their number gone, snatched without sound. Soon after, towns fell. Farmers awoke to find fields filled with figures standing motionless at the edge of the crops, watching. They did not move until the sun dipped, and then they came forward, swift, unerring, unrelenting. The creatures hunted with precision, not frenzy. They cornered prey, drove them into hiding, then waited. Hours. Days. Weeks, if needed. They had no need for rest. Hunger was their patience. The scholars who lived long enough to study them named this era the eternal hunt. For unlike wolves or lions, the hollow ones did not eat merely to survive. They pursued for the sake of pursuit, as though the chase itself was sacred. Once they marked a victim, escape was nearly impossible. Doors barred, walls built, armies raised, none of it mattered. They found a way. They always found a way. Witnesses tell of creatures standing outside homes for nights on end, never blinking, never moving, until the barricades gave way or the courage of those inside broke. Children were lured by voices of lost parents calling from the dark. Hunters vanished in the woods only to return at dusk, leading the monsters back with hollow eyes and broken smiles. In the north, a fortress was said to withstand the creatures for months, but when relief forces arrived, they found every soldier gone, and the walls painted with shadows that moved on their own. The hollow ones did not kill swiftly. They prolonged fear, savoring it, feeding not only on flesh but on dread itself. Some prey were taken alive, dragged into the ground where whispers swallowed their screams. Others were released, broken, carrying fear back to the living as warnings. A man once returned to his village after 3 nights missing. His body bore no wounds, but his eyes were black and his tongue split in two. He spoke only one phrase before collapsing dead: "The hunt never ends." What made them most terrifying was their intelligence. They learned. They adapted. Snares caught them once, never again. Fire burned them once, never again. They mimicked voices, footsteps, even prayers. They drove whole armies into ambushes using nothing but sound. At times they hunted not individuals but memories, entire bloodlines were pursued, as though the creatures remembered insults dealt to them by ancestors long dead. And yet, in the midst of terror, some sought bargains. Desperate leaders offered sacrifices, believing the Hollow Ones could be appeased. In certain valleys, whole villages disappeared willingly, vanishing into the night to spare others. In return, the monsters passed those lands by, leaving untouched fields and silent gratitude. But such bargains never lasted. Eventually, the hunt always circled back. There are accounts of a king who chained criminals at the gates of his city as offerings. For weeks the monsters ignored the walls, tearing apart the condemned instead. But one winter's night, they changed. The creatures walked past the prisoners, ignoring their screams, and struck the city itself. The king was dragged screaming into the streets, and his headless body was found days later nailed to his own throne. No kingdom that tried sacrifice ever endured. The terror spread beyond borders, beyond continents. Oceans did not stop them. Ships were found drifting empty, their sails torn, their decks slick with black ichor that was not seawater. Survivors swore they saw pale figures swimming beneath the waves, faster than sharks, staring upward with lidless eyes. Even in deserts, they came. Their forms shifting, their flesh cracking in the heat yet never withering, they hunted travelers across dunes until bones bleached white beneath the sun. And so humanity realized, these creatures did not belong to one place, one season, or one people. They were everywhere, waiting, listening. The world was their hunting ground, and mankind was not the master of it but the prey. The eternal hunt was not merely an age of slaughter. It was an age of awakening. For the Hollow Ones did not simply rise from the abyss to feed, they rose to remind mankind of something older than civilization, older than fire, fear itself. They were the shape of every nightmare, given form. And as long as a single whisper lingered in the dark, as long as a single shadow moved against the torchlight, the hunt would never end. Some dared to believe the hunt was a test. That those who survived it, those who endured its horrors, would ascend, evolve into something greater, something strong enough to face the abyss itself. But if such ascension ever came, no record of it remains. Only the silence of empty cities, the stains of bloodless shadows, and the whispers that even now drift through ruined halls. The hunt is eternal. The hunt is eternal. The hunt is eternal. The age of the eternal hunt did not end in victory, nor in peace. It ended in silence. Civilizations that had once defied empires, that had raised monuments to gods and stars, dwindled into scattered remnants. Cities that sang with music and laughter now echoed with nothing but the scuttle of vermin and the hiss of wind. Across the world, mankind withdrew into fortresses, caves, mountains, any place they believed the Hollow Ones could not follow. But they always did. At first, the end was slow, a grinding erosion. A town gone here, a fortress there, each erased until memory itself seemed to forget them. Then the disappearances grew faster. Entire nations vanished in a single season. Maps became meaningless. Borders crumbled. And everywhere the same whisper was heard in the dark, "We are coming." The scholars of the final age called it the last silence. For as humanity dwindled, the Hollow Ones changed their hunt. They no longer sought flesh alone. They sought voices. It began with singers. Choirs fell mute mid-hymn, their throats swelling with black veins until their lungs burst soundlessly. Then it spread to storytellers, to mothers whispering lullabies, to children laughing at play. One by one, voices failed. A cough became a gasp became a choke, and then, silence. The victims did not die immediately. They lingered, wide-eyed, mouths opening and closing like fish pulled from water, their screams trapped inside. In time, they faded into shadows that clung to the walls, moving only when the torches dimmed. The Hollow Ones fed not only on flesh, but on sound. They consumed the very vibration of life. As their influence spread, whole landscapes grew still. Rivers stopped rushing, though the water still flowed. Trees no longer rustled in the wind, though their branches bent and broke. Even thunder struck the skies in silence, flashes of lightning without sound. In that silence, humanity broke. The last kings ordered their scribes to carve histories into stone, knowing words would soon fail. Priests shouted prayers until their throats bled, desperate to hear even their own voices one last time. Parents pressed their children close, teaching them gestures to replace words, as if that might save them. But nothing endured. The hollow ones were patient. They waited. They hunted. They silenced. There are tales of a final city, a place hidden deep within a mountain, where thousands fled believing the rock would shield them from the whispers. They built vast halls, filled with carvings, filled with songs written upon walls so that memory might outlast voice. And for a time, they endured. But silence came even there. It began with the children. Their laughter disappeared, replaced by wide eyes and trembling hands. Then the elders, their chants breaking into airless gasps. Then the guards, shouting warnings that made no sound. At last, the city realized its doom. And so, in an act of defiance, the survivors carved one final message across the largest wall. We sang. We spoke. We lived. Remember us, even if you cannot hear us. When wanderers centuries later discovered the ruins, the carvings remained. But they too reported something stranger. When they traced the words with their fingers, they swore they could hear faint echoes in their minds, whispers of voices long lost. Some wept, hearing mothers sing to children. Others screamed, hearing cries of terror. The hollow ones had not only consumed sound, but kept it. The abyss itself had become a library of silence, every voice stored, every word trapped, every scream eternal. And what of mankind? Legends differ. Some say a few survived, scattered and feral, hiding in cracks of the world where the whispers could not reach. Others claim no human endured, that all were consumed, their voices locked in the hollow ones forever. Still others whisper of a bargain, that the last survivors willingly joined the abyss, becoming hollow ones themselves, for silence was preferable to endless fear. What is certain is this: the world grew still. The seas rolled without roar. The forest swayed without sigh. The mountains split without thunder. A planet alive yet voiceless, haunted not by screams but by the absence of them. That was the true victory of the hollow ones. Not conquest, not slaughter, but silence. Some travelers of later ages claim to still hear remnants. They say if you press your ear to the deepest stone, you will hear not emptiness, but 1,000 voices begging, screaming, laughing, praying. They say the hollow ones are not gone, only waiting, listening, feeding still. And they say the final prophecy of the abyss has yet to be fulfilled. It is carved into stone, etched in blood, whispered in dreams. When the last voice falls silent, the world will awaken again, not as it was, but as it was meant to be. A world of shadow, a world of hunger, a world where silence is the only song. Perhaps that time has not yet come. Perhaps it has already passed. Or perhaps we are living in its echo now, our voices trembling on the edge of silence, unaware that we too are prey. Listen closely. Do you hear it? The quiet between your breaths, the stillness between your words? That is not emptiness. That is the hollow ones, waiting. And when they rise again, the last silence will not be remembered, it will be repeated.